Alright, so I'm going to do a video now about the English ivy. So what happened was I bought a couple of sprig cuttings off of eBay. There were two cuttings. They were maybe about 6 inches long. And one I planted all the way in the back, which didn't take, and that one didn't do very good. But I planted one here by my pond because I wanted to get some kind of green growth that's going to grow underneath the canopy of the trees. And ivy's one of those kind of plants that will grow without a ton of direct sunlight. They'll do fine underneath the canopy of trees. Whereas grass and everything else generally don't really do very good unless it has direct sunlight. So I wanted it to be kind of green even though it was going to be shaded out. So I went with English ivy. And so here it is. This is it. Now this was a 6-inch sprig when I started. And it's not a very fast growing plant, but it took about I'm going to say 5 years to get to this point now. Now, if it's in direct sunlight and it's growing up the side of your house or something, it'll grow much faster. But this isn't in direct sunlight and it's growing very slow, and it is beginning to spread pretty rapidly now. It's really getting its way around. So let me show you a leaf on this plant. Okay, this is what the leaf looks like of English ivy. Now there's a few different types of ivies, but this one in particular is called English ivy. Alright, here's another leaf. And this plant can grow either way. It can grow along the ground, or it can grow up the side of buildings or even trees. And that's how it grows. It's a vining plant. But it does good in both ways. It does good along the ground and it does good on the trees. Now it's doing what I want it to do, and it's really not that big of a problem. It's not like, you know, periwinkle or myrtle or any of those kind of vining plants where once you start with it, it's really hard to get rid of it, and it's very fast growing and aggressive. It's not necessarily like that, but it's slower, so it gives you a little time to prune around the edges and just keep it at bay, you know. As long as if you keep the edges pruned, it's not going to spread. It'll just spread whatever you let go. So there is some maintenance involved with it, but the trade-off is definitely worth it because it leaves you with this beautiful evergreen coverage that is here all year long. Even in the wintertime, it's still green. So this whole area will still stay green even in the winter. You know, providing if it gets covered by snow, it's not gonna, it's not gonna do good in the snow. Now, it does root at the nodes, you know, like you can see here. As I'm pulling this up, you can see very much does root at the nodes, very much like periwinkle does the same thing. And once it gets that node established into the ground, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to control. So you want to get it up like I just did here, pull it out, and just move it back into its pile where it belongs, and you'll be okay. But again, here's another one right here. See, I'm pulling it up by the nodes. I don't want it to grow along outside of where it needs to be. A couple of them here. I want them to grow in there. And I just flipped it over and threw it over there. And let it grow along the top of this and you're fine. If it does get too long and out of control, you're going to need to do something about it. So just don't let it get out of control. That's basically it in a nutshell. But here, I'll show you how much it's grown. Now, there are other weeds around here growing in between it. And you can see this whole area now, this whole thing, and it's spreading all the way over to here, which is good. I wanted to do this. All the way over to here. It's spread like that, and it's going to eventually cover this whole thing with nice green English ivy, and that's going to look really beautiful. Now, also the other thing I liked about it that it's doing, which I didn't expect, is it's growing down into the pond itself, as you can see there, and it's actually coming up in different spots in the pond, so it's semi-aquatic. In other words, it doesn't mind being partially immersed in the ground. I'm sure you can't grow it underwater per se, but its stems will grow along the surface of that water and get all the way over to the other side of a pond per se and start growing that way. Now, I'm not going to let that happen per se, but you can see right here, where is it here? Right there. You can see right there, it's already got a shoot out, and it's already kind of getting ready to do that. But what happens is it does sink down below, and it kind of stunts its growth, but it doesn't die. So it's a very interesting plant. I do like English ivy. I do recommend it too if you're looking for. A lot of people will grow English ivy up against their house to reduce their air conditioning bills, and believe it or not, that does work. It actually reduces it quite a bit. But this is just one choice you have as opposed to many choices. Now, some of the downfalls of letting English ivy grow on the side of your house is it puts roots out into the mortar joints of the brick. Eventually, it causes that mortar to decay, basically, and it powderizes the mortar. Now, it might not happen in 1, 2 years, 10 years even. It might take 50, 60, 70 years, but eventually that mortar will weaken because of what the ivy does to it. So I don't recommend doing that unless you plan on, something, you use a very high-grade mortar or something that can handle it. But some people do it, maybe you can put a lattice up, like a mesh wire, and then let it grow along, let it attach itself to the mesh wire, and then grow it up the side of your house. Just don't let it attach itself to the brick, and I don't know how you're going to control that after a while, because eventually it's just going to attach to the brick anyway. So, but it's a gorgeous plant. It depends on the application you want to use it for. In a case like I'm using it here, I'm using it for a ground cover around the pond. It's perfectly fine. This is also good for landscaping in front beds. If you're looking for maintenance-free beds, this is a good choice. You can go with the periwinkle or myrtle if you want. The only problem with that stuff is that stuff is really invasive. It will eventually take over an entire yard if you let it go. So you got to be really careful with that particular one. But I do recommend the English ivy because it's much slower growing, and it's a little easier to control as far as the way it grows. Easier to pull it out, whereas the myrtle will actually put in very deep roots into the ground, and very hard to get even one of those nodes up. And it puts out, every single leaf is a node, and each one of them get a root pattern, and it's just difficult to control. This is very easy. It comes up 1, 2, 3. It's not hard to control, and it could really make your landscape look really beautiful if you apply it the right way. All right, so that was just a quick video on the English ivy. If there's any information I could find about it off a wiki or anything like that, I will definitely link it in below, and I'll leave you some links to where you could pick it up on Amazon. All right, like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.